You're listening to the Just Japan podcast. Everything you want to know about Japan.
Hey there, folks. Welcome to episode number 166 of the Just Japan podcast. Everything you want to know about Japan. My name is Kevin O'Shea, and I am the host of the Just Japan podcast. I'm a Canadian who lived and worked in Kobe, Japan for nearly 10 years. And recently I made the move to Beijing, China, where I'm recording this episode. It's episode 166, and I'm really happy to be back. It's been a while. So for all of you Just Japan podcast listeners out there, sorry it took me so long to get back in the saddle and record episode number 166. But of course, you know, if you are someone who has followed me for some time, that I recently made the move to Beijing, China with my family for work. And of course, when you're making a big move like this from one country to another, especially with a family, it takes quite a while to get settled into routines, to figure out what's going on. I mean, you're moving to a new home. You've got to kind of set up the house. A new job, learning about the new job, new school for the kids, a whole new life, learning where to buy food, how to buy food, what the heck the food is. All of these things take time. But finally, I have to say that we've got the routine set. Well, for the most part. The routine is set enough that I'm definitely feel comfortable and I have enough free time to be able to start recording the Just Japan podcast once again. And I'm really excited about that because all of you guys out there listening are people who are really interested in Japan. You're interested in learning more about the country, the culture, and learning more about the people who live there and who have lived there in the past. So I want to share that. And that's what this podcast is all about. Each and every week I bring on a different guest. We learn different things about them, what they're doing in Japan. And hopefully that will inspire you to come to Japan. If you're already in Japan, to maybe try new things. If you're not in Japan, to try new things. Who knows? And also, I want to add, for those of you out there wondering, a lot of listeners, people who follow me on Facebook and Twitter and on YouTube, were thinking, hey, Kevin, is this going to become the Beijing edition or the Beijing podcast, the Just Beijing podcast? No, not at all. This is the Just Japan podcast. I've been doing this podcast for years. There's thousands of you out there who listen, and I'm going to continue making the content that you guys love. Now, of course, I don't live in Japan anymore, but I've got a foot planted in the country. So here I am, almost 10 years there. But of course, you guys know that my wife and my kids are Japanese. My kids were born in Kobe. My wife's from Osaka. And hey, we're going to be back there for Christmas holidays, which is awesome. And then again in the summer. So I'm now in a job position where I can financially afford to, hop over to Japan once, twice a year, which is going to be great. And there's a very distinct possibility that Japan will be home again in a few years from now. So, this is where I'm at right now. It's a great situation, but it's a professional move. I came here for work, and it's not a forever move. And that's definitely a for sure thing. So again, the Just Japan podcast will be content about Japan because that's why you guys listen. And that's what I'm, really keen to share with you. So this week we got a really awesome episode for you. Each and every week I like to think we have awesome episodes for you. I'm really excited to have a new guest, a first-time guest. This is someone who I've met in person last year at the first ever Just Japan podcast meetup, which was held in December, I think December 27th. At the Harbor Tavern in Kobe, Japan. It was an amazing event. Today, it depends on where you are and what time you're listening to it. This episode, I'll be talking to Tom from the Being Kansai Twitter feed, and the @Being Kansai Twitter feed is a great place to go to get lots of amazing information about the Kansai region of Japan. So I talked to Tom a little bit about his story, what he does in Japan, about the @Being Kansai Twitter feed, and a lot of cool things. So stay tuned. We got a great interview for you. You're really going to enjoy it.
Please hang up and try again.
Folks, welcome to episode number 166 of the Just Japan podcast, being Kansai. And this evening, I'm very happy to welcome a very special guest, first-time guest on the Just Japan podcast, Tom from Being Kansai. Welcome to the,
Hey, everybody.
to the show. Cool.
Hey, thanks for I've been listening for a long time, so it's really cool to guest.
Hey, we're really happy to have you here. It's kind of the comeback episode of the Just Japan podcast. It's been a while. I think probably close to 2 months since
Wow.
an episode has been put out. Yeah, but with my big transition from Japan over here to Beijing, this is basically something I've been wanting to do, but just haven't had the time nor the routine to do it.
Yeah.
But we're into it now. I'm full stride into my routine of life, and I've got the time to start doing the podcast again. So I'm really happy that you joined us to kick the series off again.
Well, I'm honored to be here.
Awesome. Okay, well, first of all, as I ask all guests who come on the Just Japan podcast for the first time or the second or third time, I always like to ask people, if you could tell the Just Japan podcast listeners a little bit about yourself, where you're from, and where you are in Japan.
Okay, well, my name's Tom, and I'm originally from the Bronx in New York City, and I don't really have my accent anymore, but I'm now in Hirakata City, which is a city on the border of Osaka and Kyoto in the Kansai area of Japan.
Okay, so Hirakata, so that's kind of like a little bit north of Osaka, isn't it?
Exactly. So it is a bit far from downtown Kyoto or downtown Osaka, but it is useful to get to both places if you want.
Okay. All right. Now, the question has to be asked: how long have you been in Japan?
Well, I've been back and forth, but probably around 15 years total.
15 years total. Wow.
I originally came to study abroad, and I kind of just have stayed ever since. So, yeah.
Well, there comes the next question. I'm really curious. We all have our different Japan stories, and people end up in Japan for different reasons, different ways. Sometimes accidentally, and sometimes it's a goal that people have had for a really long time. So how about you? What first got you interested in Japan, and how did you end up there?
Well, it's kind of funny. My birthday is actually Pearl Harbor Day in America, which is a national holiday in America to commemorate the beginning of World War II.
Okay.
And Pearl Harbor Day, of course, was when the Japanese Navy attacked Pearl Harbor in Hawaii. So even from a very young age, I heard a lot about Japan, and I heard a lot of jokes about that. So even though I was a bit too young to really understand anything, of course, I kind of felt a tie with Japan. I'm like, I have to learn more about this. So even from a young age, I was very interested. And as I got older, growing up in kind of the 80s with the ninja boom and the Godzilla movies and things like that, I got more and more into Japanese culture. And then when I was about 10, my older brother studied abroad in Japan, and he had a great time. And one of the places he liked the most was actually Osaka in the Kansai area.
Okay.
So later on, when I was his age, when I was in college myself, I said, okay, I'm going to be abroad myself.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So you went to Japan when you were in university to do a study abroad.
Exactly. Yeah.
Where did you end up in Japan to do that study abroad?
That was actually in Hirakata, where I am now.
Okay. Okay.
Now, I haven't lived in Hirakata the entire time. I've lived in Kyoto. I've lived in Fukuoka for 1 year, but I did end up actually coming back to Hirakata, so it's kind of funny.
Okay, so Hirakata is definitely a city that a lot of people, it's probably not on the radar of many people who are interested in Japan. Can you tell us a little bit about it, or what you like about it? Is it a good place to live, a good place to raise a family?
I think it's kind of off the radar, but it's growing, it's getting bigger, and it is convenient. It's kind of in the middle of Osaka, Kyoto, and we're also close to Nara. It's kind of right in the middle, and there's a fair amount of nature, but it's also growing as a city. So it's a nice little town. I mean, there's not a ton happening here, but we do have a cool little theme park called Hirakata Park.
Okay, yeah.
And,
that's like a roller coaster, right? Like a big roller coaster, a wooden roller coaster?
Yeah, they've got a big roller coaster, a big Ferris wheel, and they'll have some like comedians come, and every once in a while, some minor celebrities will come and have a little show there. So
It's always great to
it's
be
been open a long time. So
It's always great to be entertained by minor celebrities. Yes.
yeah,
Nice.
we'll take whatever celebrities we can get here.
I'm going to
So
be honest here, and pardon my ignorance, but I mean, I spent almost 10 years living in the Kansai, and I
yeah.
always thought that Hirakata was part of Osaka.
Well, it is actually it's part of Osaka Prefecture, but not part of the city. It's a different city.
Okay, I
So
know. Yeah, I thought it was actually like a part of Osaka City.
yeah.
But so pardon me for my ignorance. My
Well, no, it's
ignorance.
a little confusing. So
Yeah, I mean, I've been to Hirakata before. I've run the years ago, back like 2008 and
hmm
2009 or 10. I ran the what is it? The Osaka Citizens Yodogawa Marathon.
yeah, the Yodogawa, which is the river that goes from Osaka all the way up to Kyoto.
Yep,
Sort of historically, it's sort of famous for that.
so both years, I remember the marathon started. The starting line was in Hirakata,
Yeah,
and the finish line was not. But
yeah.
but so I remember
One thing
going.
it's famous
Mhm.
for, I don't know if you know the video rental chain called Tsutaya,
Yeah,
which is
yeah, of
sort of like the
course.
Japanese Blockbuster.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
They're originally from Hirakata City, so recently they opened a huge like mall that's all their own. It's called T Site,
Oh, really?
and if you
Wow.
look that up online, the pictures are pretty impressive, and it's huge. It's like kind of strange that it's in this city, but I think it's just basically because it is their headquarters. Otherwise, we wouldn't have something like that. But it's pretty impressive.
Oh, wow. Cool, cool.
Yeah,
A good place to separate you and your money.
yeah,
Um, is it kind of like a big Eon mall or something like that?
yeah. They've got like they've got tons of little mini shops and all these cafes, and it's all glass, and the building is designed. It's a very futuristic design, especially for a town like this. It's just got like a mix of everything. It's hard to explain. You don't know when you're leaving one shop and going into another because of the way it's designed.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But it's cool though.
Cool. All right. And
Yeah.
now I was just actually thinking something I just mentioned a little bit earlier. Yeah, when I ran that marathon, actually the start and finish line were in Hirakata. We started in Hirakata. We ran down to like near Umeda, and then
Yeah.
back to Hirakata again.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and it was just along that footpath by the river. So
Yeah.
boring as hell. Like
Yeah.
to run a full marathon, and then
Yeah.
later on I'd run like my next marathon was a Tokyo marathon, and it was just
Yeah.
like, oh, this is amazing. There's people
There's
everywhere.
stuff to look at.
There's
Yeah.
stuff to look at, things to do. I remember that Hirakata marathon, or the running from there. It was like my first one. There was some pretty dark moments where like
Oh.
you're hurting and you're in pain, and there's no one around. You're just
Yeah.
like,
Well,
oh, it's rough.
it's funny because it's between these two huge cities, but at night, cycling along that river, like
Hmm.
you'll run into deer sometimes. You'll run into tanuki, to the raccoon dogs.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
You'll
yeah.
run into a little bit of everything, stuff that you wouldn't expect to be so close to like these big cities.
Mm. Yeah, that's cool. I mean, hey, it's fun to have deer encounters at night when you're on a bicycle.
Yeah,
Yeah, or maybe not. But okay, so
definitely wakes you up.
yeah, definitely, yeah, right. So, folks out there, if you're wondering, hey, why the heck is Tom on the podcast this evening or this morning, whenever you're listening to it? A few reasons. First of all, of course, I had the good fortune of meeting you last December.
Yeah,
You came out to Kobe for the Just Japan podcast meetup,
yeah,
which
that
was
was awesome.
really awesome. That was a really great time. Um, sadly, maybe you know what? Actually, maybe one could happen this year.
Oh,
Maybe.
really?
Well, I'm actually going to be so. Of course, I've already talked. I'm going to talk about this extensively in the lead in to this interview and this episode.
hmm
Right now I'm in Beijing, but I'm going to be spending the Christmas and New Year holiday in Kobe.
Oh, awesome.
So I'm going to be Kobe and Osaka. So my family and I we're flying into Osaka on the 25th on Christmas,
hmm
and we're going to be there until the 4th of January.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
That's a fair amount of time.
Yeah, yeah. So we're going to go there and spend the time basically with my wife's family, of course, and especially to be there for Oshogatsu.
Yeah.
I want to be there for New Year's, and then again, of course, I'll be visiting when I have my summer holiday next year. I'll be going to Japan and Canada, but of course, be stopping in Kobe and Osaka and all that stuff. Um,
Cool.
Always got that foot in the door You know,
Yeah.
got family there,
Well, it's
right?
sort of
So
it's on the way back to Canada, so you might
exactly.
as well stop in when you can, you know.
Why not? Why not? Right?
Yeah.
So yeah. So maybe there could be a Just Japan podcast meetup this winter again. Yes. And now I didn't even think about that. It's like, wait, I'm going to be there. I'm going to be in Kobe and Osaka. Not at the same time, of course, because my body would be ripped apart if that were the case. But
Yeah.
the main reason, folks, I want to have Tom on this evening is because he's the person behind the at Being Kansai Twitter feed.
Yes.
So at Being Kansai is a Twitter feed that I'm definitely a fan of what you do on Twitter. You
Yeah.
definitely, in my opinion, you post some
Thank you.
really awesome information about the Kansai, what's happening in the Kansai, events, just all kinds of good stuff about the Kansai region of Japan. First of all, I'm going to ask you, to tell us a bit more about Being Kansai. But for those for those out there who might not know, what the Kansai region is, because of course everyone knows Tokyo, everyone knows Kyoto,
Yeah.
and people
Yeah.
they know Osaka, but the term
Yeah.
Kansai might be a bit ambiguous for them. What is the Kansai region?
Well, the Kansai region is an area in central Japan, right in the middle, and it basically includes the Osaka Prefecture, Kyoto, Hyogo, and that's where Kobe City is,
Mhm.
Wakayama, which is one in the south, and Shiga, where Japan's largest lake, Biwa Lake, is. So it's that all those prefectures kind of together, and they kind of have their own dialect, and the area has a certain personality. Each city, of course, like Osaka and Kyoto, aren't exactly the same,
No, definitely not.
but it does have kind of its own feel, kind of, so its own
Yeah.
atmosphere, and it is the second kind of biggest rival region after Tokyo, after Kanto, which Tokyo is in.
Yeah. And I mean, I think a lot of people, talk about the very distinct different cultures between Kanto and Kansai. I think even like if you guys out there listening, if you've never lived in Japan and you plan on visiting, if you're going to do a tour of Japan, I think one of the first things that will stand out to you, I don't know why this popped into my brain, but the escalators, which side you stand on, right?
Yep, yep,
So what is it in Kanto? The standing lane on the escalators is on the left,
yeah,
and the
and
walking
then
is on the right. You walk down on the right or walk up on
yes,
the right. Whereas it's the opposite in Kansai.
yep.
So
And then I've also heard that the tatami mats, which a lot of like places use to measure the size of the rooms, like, oh, it's
Mhm.
a 5.5 tatami mat room. I've heard that the tatami mats in Kansai are actually a little bigger
Oh
than
really?
in Kanto. So even most people think of it as this uniform standard, but even the tatami mats are a little different.
Wow. And then there's of course like the kind of personality. I think like especially like Osaka, the people are known for being more gregarious, having better senses of humor.
Yeah,
Um,
it's
you
the
know.
kind of the comedy capital of
Hmm.
of Japan.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
yeah,
So I think for Japanese people, people who have aspirations of becoming entertainers and comedians, they normally have to basically kind of one of the things you got to do. The rite of passage is to move to Osaka and cut your teeth in the comedy scene.
yep,
Kind of just like if you want to be an actor, a Broadway actor, you got to move to New York.
yep, exactly.
If you want to get on the screen, you got to move to LA. If you want to be a comedian, you got to move to Osaka. Yeah.
Yeah, the big company is called Yoshimoto, and
That's right.
they've become more and more of a kind of a tourist attraction in their own right. So,
Oh, really?
um, yeah,
Hmm. Cool. Well, the Kansai region has definitely got its unique flavor. So, can you tell the Just Japan podcast listeners a little bit more about at Being Kansai on Twitter?
yeah, sure. Well, it's sort of a part-time Roker account, and a Roker account, if anyone is wondering, is a rotation curation account.
Okay.
So, a famous one. The first time I ever heard about this was I was watching the Colbert Report, and I think there was a Sweden rotation curation account, and Stephen Colbert was, oh, he's American obviously, but he was trying to get a slot on that account, but he didn't get it. So that's where I first learned about the concept, where it is, people who live in a certain place or a certain city or country will take turns hosting an account and just talking about their everyday life. And later on, I saw that there was one. I stumbled across Being Tokyo,
Okay.
and it had just started up a little while earlier. I think maybe about a year ago. And I thought, hey, why, it'd be good to have one for Osaka or Kyoto. And I was like, hey, maybe I guess all of Kansai would be good. There's about 22 million people in Kansai, so it's a good number, a good region, and you get a bit of variety between Osaka, Kobe, Kyoto, Nara, all those places.
Yeah.
So I talked to them, and they gave me some. One of the guys running it gave me some good advice. And but in the meantime, when it first started out, building it up, I realized I'd have to kind of to get it big enough for people to want to curate, I'd have to kind of provide some information on my own for a while. So I just started out, sharing some news and events and some information about Kansai and different areas in Osaka. And I've had a couple people host the account a couple times, and it's been good. So it's a good way for people to kind of learn about a place, but from like kind of the birds, not the birds eye, like the street level view.
Yeah.
People, their everyday lives. And sometimes stuff we post are people who are hosting it. They're like, oh, I'm not really doing anything special this week, or I'm just working. And but just post about their commute, post about what they're eating for lunch. It's funny. Sometimes the most kind of mundane things people really latch onto and will ask a lot of questions about. So
Well, I think
it's a cool concept.
Yeah, well, I think from my years of living in Japan, and now living here in Beijing, I mean, people who are not in Japan, who are abroad, who really want to go there, people of the true legitimate interest or fascination in Japan, they are interested in like that kind of nuts and bolts of daily life. Like, what's it like just to be there?
Yeah,
Exactly. Like not the fancy glamorous stuff. And I think like even, of course, I got my start on social media with my YouTube channels, my Busan Kevin YouTube channel. And, I never had the kind of flashy, glitzy editing that some other YouTubers do. Mind you, I never had the success either. But one of the compliments that I always got from people is that they really enjoyed just seeing, there were just, some people would say, what we like about your YouTube channel is there's nothing flashy about you. You're just a real guy showing what it's like to be there.
Yeah.
Like it's not like there's adventure and travel and drama
Yeah.
and beauty. It's just like, hey guys, like I'm just a regular dude and I live here and this is what it's like in a regular day in Japan.
Yeah. So I try to strike a balance between, some people when they do the account, they'll have a very active schedule and they'll go to a lot of really cool like places that
which is great,
probably want to visit. But then when I'm curating it, I also just kind of try to like share some information of the culture or the history or just upcoming concerts. So there's kind of a nice balance where you're getting the view from someone who's been here a long time and kind of giving you some general information. But then I still have people curate every once in a while who can give you their own specific take when it's different from mine. So I think it's a good balance of variety,
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like, I think, it's good to have that mix. I mean, I wish I was doing exciting things on a more regular basis to be able to share with people. But at the end of the day, even like, for example, I just recently moved from Kobe here to Beijing, and people are kind of like, what's going on there? And it's just like, I really don't know. I haven't actually been to any big tourist destinations yet, and I've been here for a month because
you're probably just really still processing, I guess.
Well, but I hit the ground running. I moved here with my family. I started a new job. I went through training for the job, and then I've got this really intense full-time job. I've got 2 kids who are going to a brand new school where I work. Like everyone's life has completely changed, and to be honest, like going to Tiananmen Square or the Forbidden City or the Temple of Heaven, these are things that are not quite on the radar yet. We gotta kind of get settled in, and like with this podcast, I think this is me putting out this episode is a sign that I'm finally getting settled in. Where I'm not all frantic and stuff. I'm like, hey, I've got time to start podcasting again. Let's do this.
Yeah.
But again, so it's kind of like. I went to the convenience store today once, and maybe I can take some pictures of stuff there.
Yeah.
Because that's
You'd be surprised.
The best I can do.
Some people have said that. They'll go to like a really expensive kaiseki, restaurant in Kyoto, and they're like, oh, posted a picture of that, and I didn't really get much response. But then when I went to the beef bowl chain, I got hundreds of responses. So it's surprising what people. It's cool because it reminds you of the perspective of people. Some people who follow the account are in Japan, but then there's a lot who aren't, and how those two perspectives are different, and they're both valid.
Yeah, exactly, exactly, and that's how you have to think about it. I mean, like, you'll always hear me talking about. I'll say things like, for those of you who are not in Japan, because I know that
Yeah.
the majority of the listeners to this podcast are not in Japan, but there
Yep.
is a big following who are in Japan.
Yeah.
So you of course you don't want to talk down to people who are in Japan, because I mean
Yeah.
there's people who listen to this podcast who know a heck of a lot more about Japan than I do and have lived in Japan longer, and just
Yeah.
but then again, there's also people who are sitting in their dorm rooms, in the States or in Canada or Australia, who are like, I think I might try to apply for the JET program next year.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, or I've even, there's, kids who are in junior high school and high school who are just like, hey, I might apply for like you, maybe a year abroad or a study abroad program.
Yep.
Yeah. So, you gotta think of all those different bases.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, okay, so at being Kansai, obviously is a Twitter account. Would you say that
Yes.
Twitter, for those out there listening who are not on the Twitter, of course, I mean, there's a lot of great social media sites out there that to get info, you want to see the stuff. You look at Instagram,
Yeah.
Facebook pages, this and that. But what would you say some of the advantages of Twitter are for those who are interested in travel, who are interested in learning more about a region?
I think with Twitter, I mean, it is limited in terms of how many pictures you can put in one post or words, but I think you kind of it forces people to cut down to you have to kind of be picky and choosy about what you want to post, and hopefully the theory is at least that people kind of pick the best stuff, that you don't have to wade through lots of extra stuff that you might on Facebook. Like I think each platform has its pluses and minuses, and we do have I do have started a little Being Kansai Instagram site.
Oh, tell us about that.
Well, it's just this one is just me, just some random photos I've put up, but I do find that Twitter, you do make more of a connection when you post things. You do get more questions. It does feel more personal than Instagram in some ways. Like you'll get likes on Instagram, but it doesn't feel like there's that back
interaction
and forth so much. Yeah, there's much more. The interaction feels more real on Twitter. It could just be me, but there is something about Twitter where people are kind of a bit more. I don't know. There's more of a freedom to just talk to anyone randomly.
Oh,
And
yeah.
it has its pluses and minuses, but overall, it's been pretty positive for me, I think.
Okay, I'm curious to find out, where do you get all the information that you find? Because you post a lot of really interesting things about concerts, about festivals, about like different events that are going on, beer gardens, beer festivals.
Yeah,
But
yeah, that's a
that's all
good
good
question.
stuff. Where do you find all that stuff?
Various websites. There are a lot of other good Twitter accounts I've found. One is the great Kansai Photos, at Kansai Photos, who actually I think he was on your podcast before.
Yep,
Yeah, he
absolutely.
was on
Yeah,
your podcast.
he was definitely.
He's an excellent source of especially festivals.
Yeah,
Anyone looking for any festival information in Kansai should go to him. He's great.
yeah.
But my secret weapon is probably my wife,
Okay.
who's Japanese, and she'll often kind of give me the scoop, like on something that's coming up, and before maybe some of the English language news sites will, or some of the other English language accounts will, she'll be like, "Oh, did you hear about this?" and send me the link and explain it to me. So she's really helpful. I'm very thankful to
Nice.
her for that kind of help. Um, so that's pretty helpful too. Yeah, and then also as an English teacher, I'll try to talk to my students about, while I'm talking to some of my adult students. I sometimes get some interesting, updates and news from them. So I've got my kind of different sources I'm cultivating. So,
Nice.
but no one major thing. But there are some good Twitter accounts. There are some good websites. But I
Yeah.
try to look in a lot of different places.
Nice. So just spending time out there skimming around looking for things. I mean, that's at the end of the day how over the years I found a lot of the guests for the Just Japan podcast is literally by sitting down in front of Twitter, punching in a few different hashtags about the local area,
Yeah.
and then just surfing around and then kind of stumbling across people and then contacting them and seeing if they'd be game to come on the podcast. And
Yeah.
yeah.
And you'd be surprised. Sometimes people are, you wouldn't expect to know about beer garden, or they'll have tons of information, and So it's a good way to kind of get to know people at the same time. And before I did this account, I'd often hear about like some event or some festival or something like the day after, and like in the newspaper, like, oh, this event was a lot of fun. And I'm like, well, I want to know about the stuff beforehand,
Yeah, yeah,
or
yeah.
find out about a concert before the tickets have gone on sale and it's sold out already, So
Mm.
that's the kind of thing I was like, all right, with this account, I want to partially try to get a bit more lead time for people who are interested, who are going to visit, to be a bit more useful.
Cool, cool. That's a very good
Yeah.
idea. And I'm glad you're doing it. And I'm sure the people out there now listening who are involved in Twitter, who have Twitter accounts, who may not be following you, will go to @beingkansai, and then they'll get all this great info as well. Okay, so I noticed last weekend, I was, as I follow you on the Twitter, that you hosted a tweet up.
Yes, and I mean that was partially inspired by your Christmas tweet up last year, and that was so much fun, and that was such a success. I was like, all right, it's time to do something in Kansai myself, and I know a couple of Twitterers or
Hmm.
tweeters who'd done their own little meetups before, but I tried to do just a more general one. And there was also a Mexican festival at the Umeda Sky Building, which is a very cool building in downtown Osaka. So I figured, hey, this is a good opportunity to get people to come out and have a meetup. So yeah, I did that last Sunday.
So tell us, okay, so, obviously last, for those of you out there listening who've been longtime listeners of the podcast, you'll remember that last year for quite a while I was announcing about the Just Japan podcast, like winter meetup, which we had on the possibly maybe 27th of December, I think. And that was a really fun time in Kobe. Quite a few people came out. We had drinks and food and good conversation and all that stuff. So with the tweet up,
Yeah.
how did you kind of like push that out there? How did you sell it or advertise it to folks?
I basically just once I found out about that festival day and I chose the location. It was funny. It wasn't really that much work. It was surprisingly simple. Where I just kind of told people, okay, this is the day, this is the place, and the time, and who was coming. Like it kind of everybody's so cool, and everybody's very proactive. So I think people were happy to have this kind of opportunity, and they kind of everybody just communicated. It was
Nice,
funny. It was
nice.
almost automatic. So it's like if anybody's ever thinking about doing something like that, it's. I've heard a lot of things about how it can be very complicated, and you've got to prepare name tags and blah 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 blah. But it was actually quite simple. Yeah,
That's
just
awesome.
I did decide when I decided to do the tweet up, I did start tweeting about it probably about a month in advance, which is good.
Yeah,
So
yeah, you definitely want to give some advance notice. You don't want to do it as a last minute thing. You might find yourself standing there alone,
yeah,
awkwardly. But I mean,
yeah,
I'm really happy. I think one of the things that made me happy to see that you were doing this was the sense of building a community, because
yeah,
I think like when I first came to Japan, I was very active in the YouTube community, and that was back in like 2008. And those were in the days pre-monetization. No one was making money. Even the
yeah,
air quotes famous people, no one made money. No one did it for that reason. And some of the best friends I ever made in Japan, I met through YouTube and through
yeah,
that community. And we used to actually, in the beginning, 2008, fall 2008, myself and a few other people, Kansai PJ, there was Reynolds there. We were hosting monthly meetups.
yeah,
And it might just be like 4 or 5 people showing up at a pub for a beer.
yeah,
But there was like a definite, really nice sense of community, which I felt over the years got lost. Um,
yeah. And I mean, we'd heard. I think Tokyo is at the being. Some of the people who run Being Tokyo have their own little meetups, and I've heard from some people who've actually moved from Kanto to from Tokyo to Kansai that they thought, oh, they're friendly on Twitter, but they're not really socialized. They don't really want to. They're hard to meet up with. So
mm,
that's why I was like, yeah, we need to kind of make this concrete event that everybody can kind of come to and start to interact a bit more.
nice. So, do you think this is going to be? It sounds like it was a positive experience. Do you think there'll be more Being Kansai tweet ups happening in the future?
Definitely, definitely. But Kansai is a big place with a lot of different prefectures. So, I was thinking of maybe rotating between, Kyoto, Kobe, Osaka, so we can kind of get a different location, and it's easier for everybody. Because sometimes the people in some of the not as famous prefectures feel like, oh, I have to go to Osaka again, I have to go down to Kyoto again. But so I want to try and make it a little bit more fair for everybody. But
Yeah.
it's cool, it's one thing about it is that's interesting is like you might see some different Twitter people, and you might think, oh, they're so different. Like, are they going to get along, or are they going to have anything to talk about? But when you meet in person, it's funny how it all melds together, and people really everybody really clicked together. So it was really nice.
That's awesome. Very cool. Actually, you've inspired me. I think I'm going to try to host a tweet up here in Beijing.
Yeah.
I'm pretty new to things here. I've got so for all of you guys out there listening who follow me on social media, I've got my main account, my JLandKev, at JLandKev, JapanLandKev, and that's been my account for years. But I've started a new Twitter account, which is it's kind of a separate thing. It's like kind of my professional teaching account. So it's all about like me teaching in Beijing, doing stuff in Beijing, how should I say, teacher related stuff in Beijing, education related stuff. And by the way, another question for people might be asking, for those out there who do follow, it's called at Mad for Maple. Canadian twist there, at Mad for Maple. They're like, why are you showing so many pictures of your students? There's always pictures of your students. Actually, here, very different than Japan, it's not only okay, it's absolutely encouraged.
Oh, really? Interesting. That's definitely different.
All students, at the school I'm teaching at, when the parents sign the contract, there's an actual waiver form in their contract that gives full permission for their likenesses and pictures to be used on social media.
Wow. That's totally different than here.
Yep, it's all for advertising purposes. So it's all marketing and branding, and this school apparently has leaped and jumped heads above other schools in the last couple of years because of their use of social media.
Yeah.
So I think there's about 85 international schools in Beijing, and we're now ranked at like maybe number 4.
Wow.
So
congratulations.
Yeah. So well, I mean, I had nothing. Well, I'm working on it now, but I didn't have anything to do with that. But I'm here teaching and enjoying it, and it's really fun to share on social media this kind of different aspect. And then so then of course I've got my other Twitter account, my kind of one where I'm still sharing all this Japan stuff and just silly stuff. The silliness and the fun side of things. Okay, so. The tweet ups are happening and all this and that. Now, you've already mentioned a few sites that you would recommend for those out there listening who are interested in more information about the Kansai region, more information about Japan. But what are some other Twitter accounts? I mean, you mentioned Kansai Photos, of course.
That's a great one.
That's a great one. Guys, go there at Kansai Photos. He's been on the podcast before. He's got a great blog, too. He did some really fun, in-depth stuff about different festivals. What are some other websites or Twitter accounts out there you'd recommend? Accounts, yeah.
Another good one is, I think it's the official account for Osaka tourism, but there's one called Osaka Bob.
Oh, you'll love Osaka Bob. Yeah, I love Osaka Bob.
A really good one.
Yeah.
Great information about upcoming events, and whoever's running it is a really cool, funny guy too. So
yeah, he interacts with me sometimes. It's great.
Yeah, it's there's some of those kind of official tourism accounts that just kind of, there's like a PR posting account, but he's very active and very personal, which is nice. So I definitely go, and he's funny. Yeah, I definitely recommend him. Another one is Sharing Kyoto, at Sharing Kyoto. Which
that's a good one.
Kyoto, there's so many great accounts, so many great Twitter accounts for Kyoto. So it's hard to go wrong. But at Sharing Kyoto is another one with a bit more of a personal touch, and some again, I like sites, I like accounts that have a bit of a sense of humor too. So at Sharing Kyoto is another good one. Another good one is at Nippon Culture Quest, which is run by a YouTuber, and she kind of goes around and she does a bit of sightseeing, but she seems to be big into wagashi, which are like Japanese traditional snacks, and Kansai is a very strong area for that.
Cool.
Another two more, sorry, but
no problem. Please share.
Two are people who've curated being Kansai. One is at Squeakzoid, and she did a week recently on the account, and she did a little bit of everything, and it was really interesting. So you can always check her account, and then you can go back to the time when she did being Kansai and check out the stuff she posted. It was pretty funny, pretty exciting stuff.
Cool.
Yeah. So there's a lot of good stuff. But if you come to the site, you'll see the kind of people I'm interacting with, and the kind of accounts, and there's so many to mention, but that's just a couple of a few that are worth checking out.
Exactly. So my suggestion, everyone, just go to Twitter and follow at being Kansai, and then you'll be able to find all this goodness.
And if you are interested in Tokyo, check out at Being Tokyo
Yeah,
too, because they're
exactly.
a great one. And yeah, they have a lot of people always volunteering to curate the site. So you get a lot of interesting different perspectives with them too. So
Cool. And I will put I'll put links in the show notes if I can actually get the show notes site to work. One thing that I've learned now that I'm in Beijing, for some reason, Beijing, China, and WordPress, even with VPNs running,
yeah,
it's a bad scene. I recently started. I've got 2 paid WordPress accounts. I got justjapanstuff.com and boostonkevin.com, and they both, I can't upload anything to them here. Even
oh
running
man,
multiple firewalls, or not
Ooh,
firewalls, VPNs.
yeah,
So I'm all about VPNs. Even right now, talking to you, it wouldn't be
yeah. It's a miracle
wouldn't be happening.
that you can even use Twitter, because Twitter's not generally is blocked in China, right?
People are pretty surprised. They're like, "You're on Twitter, you're on Facebook." I'm like, "Yeah, I am."
Yeah.
But there's software that allows you to do that. That that I'm using.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got to find your ways around. So sometimes people may be saying, "Wait, it says that Kevin's posting from Japan." Often it looks like I'm posting from Japan or the States.
Did he come back for a visit and not tell us?
Yeah, but that's where
Nope, it's the VPN.
that's what Twitter thinks my phone is or my computer is. Kevin's hopping between the United States a lot too. He hasn't lived there before, but yeah. So where there's a will, there's a way. So I mean, I recently started a new Beijing blog, beijingkevin.blogspot.com.
Cool.
And but that one is a blog spot, so that's a blogger one, just because I couldn't get my WordPress accounts to work. So we'll see. I'll figure it out. There's a will, there's a way. But regardless, even if I can't get the show notes working, the information will be shared, and of course the podcast, that site works. My podcast hosting service, or my podcast host, I can still upload to that, so that's good.
That's the most important one.
That is the most important one, right? Exactly. Getting these podcasts out to all of the awesome people out there listening. So is there anything else you'd like to plug before we wrap things up this evening?
Yeah, I mean, anyone who's you don't have to live in Kansai. Even if you're coming for a little visit, just going to be a few days. If you want to take a turn running the account, just get in touch with me. I have a separate Twitter account called @KansaiTom, where you can message me and we can talk about the logistics if you're interested in doing that. Just and check out the Instagram too, @BeingKansai.
Cool. So at Being Kansai on Instagram, of course at Being Kansai on Twitter, and if you're interested in actually taking over the account and curating it for a little while, @Kansai Tom.
Yeah, that's it.
Awesome. Okay. Well, hey Tom, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us on the comeback special episode of the Just Japan podcast.
Man, I'm honored. I'm very excited.
Of course, guys, I have to share the social media stuff. Of course, now you can find the Just Japan podcast on all major podcatchers. Just do a Google search for Just Japan podcast. We're all over the place. You can follow me on Twitter @JLandKev. You can also follow my new kind of professional teaching, cool Beijing work Twitter feed, which is called @MadForMaple, playing on the stereotypes of us Canadians. Of course, the Facebook page is facebook.com/JustJapanStuff. Go there, check it out. Check out justjapanstuff.com. Has not been updated in a while. I have to admit, I've been fighting with the WordPress sites since I've come to China. Of course, the reason why you get the regular me on Twitter, the regular me on Facebook, is because I'm using VPNs in order to be able to use the full internet here in China. But for some reason, I've been having a lot of problems with my WordPress sites. But go check out Just Japan Stuff for sure. I will try to get the show notes for this episode up there. And I've got a new blog, so check out beijingkevin.blogspot.com. beijingkevin.blogspot.com, and that's a very Beijing-centric one. That's the one about where I'm at now. So all those notes will be shared on Twitter, on Facebook. They'll be all over the place, or all those links. So go follow me on the social medias, everybody. All right. Well, I want to thank Tom for taking the time to come by the Just Japan podcast and share his really interesting story. Of course, you can find him over on Twitter @BeingKansai. So go check it out, guys. Go check it out. It's some cool stuff. And, of course, links will be in the show notes at justjapanstuff.com if I can get the freaking WordPress site working. We'll see. I want to thank all you guys for tuning in. It's been a long time. let's make this a regular thing. Just you, me, our guest, and your time commuting, your time running, on your bicycle, at home, whatever. Again, I'm really happy to be podcasting again. It definitely makes me excited. There will be weekly episodes to come. I have the time. My life is definitely much more relaxed than it was in Japan, I have to admit. I do have more free time to do the things that I want to do now that I'm finding my routine. So this podcast is definitely one of them. Of course, like I mentioned earlier on in the show, you can just do a Google search for Just Japan Podcast, and you'll find us all over the place. We're on iTunes, we're on Stitcher, we're on Libsyn, we're all over the place, guys. SoundCloud. Yeah, so of course, again, follow me on Twitter at JLandKev. Follow me on Twitter at MadForMaple. Go to the Facebook page, Just Japan Stuff. Go to justjapanstuff.com. All the blah 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 blah. But yeah, so there you go, folks. Next week. And of course, if you have any questions for me to answer, in the mailbag section, you have any questions about Japan, what I'm doing here in China, that kind of thing, just throw them at me. You can always email me at justjapanpodcast@gmail.com, justjapanpodcast@gmail.com, or shoot me a note over on the social media. I would appreciate it. I'd love to get your feedback on... Oh, now one thing I need to add about this episode, I forgot to mention earlier on. You probably noticed that the sound quality is very different, and the interview portion is very tinny, ringy, and not as good as normal. I don't have my microphones with me. When we moved from Kobe to Beijing, I packed away all of my microphones to be sent by a shipping company. I won't be getting that stuff until October, and I'm kicking myself. I should have just thrown at least like my Blue Snowball microphone in my suitcase. I don't have any kind of mics. I literally so when I talked to Tom, when I interviewed Tom, literally just using my MacBook, talking with using the internal microphone on the MacBook. So if you notice that the sound quality just isn't what it normally is, that's why. And right now I'm recording the intro part of the show and the outro part of the show. Using my iPhone, and I'm using an Egitige iPhone microphone with a fur windscreen. And if you hear any noise in the background, that's the air conditioner. So that's what I'm using to record. So for the next few weeks, the interviews will just be using the internal microphone on my MacBook. So it won't be as good as it normally is, but hey, the content will still be great. You'll have great interviews to enjoy. So that's it, guys. Thank you so much for taking the time to download the Just Japan podcast. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen. Thank you for sharing this podcast on your social media, guys. That would help a lot. Get more people listening to the Just Japan podcast. That always motivates me to make more episodes. So that's it, guys. My name's Kevin O'Shea. I'm talking to you from Beijing, China at the moment, and I'm talking to you all about stuff about Japan. That's it for another Just Japan podcast. Wherever you are in the world, I hope you're happy. Hope you're healthy. I'll be talking to you real soon.